Hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the channel for connecting Celtic fans all around the world. Whether you're in Saltcoats or Santiago, whether you're in Carntine or Cancun, we're the place for you to this evening or this morning or this afternoon or whatever it is where you are to come along and share some stories and share some grief maybe from the sadness we're all feeling at the moment. So you're all very welcome along. So who are we? We're a Celtic channel who only got going this season. We've just crashed through the 900 subscribers mark. So please, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe the channel as it really helps us. In fact, just go and do it just now while you're waiting on us starting to talk. So that'd be a good idea. So joining me tonight on A Celtic World, we've got Robert in Singapore. Robert, how are you doing?
Yeah, all right. Just trying to come to terms with, the match that I watched at Parkhead. So very disappointed.
Yeah, more of that to come. And Brian, who's in Ireland, how are you doing, mate?
Not too bad, sir. Not too bad. I've had better Monday mornings. Yeah. Next question. We're all in black today, so that must mean something.
Yeah. So before we get into it, I'll just run through what times our shows are on. So we're live on a Monday and a Thursday. The times are there. So if you're like myself, you're in the east coast of Australia, it's 8:30 p.m. If you're in Korea, 6:30. If you're in Hong Kong or Singapore, like Robert, 5:30. If you're in Abu Dhabi, 1:30. If you're in Central Europe, 10:30. If you're at Celtic Park or in the UK, it's 9:30 in the morning. And in Pittsburgh, it's 4:30 a.m. So what we're going to talk about tonight, lads, let's just see what we can dig up from the weekend. So we're going to start, unfortunately, talking a bit about the Kilmarnock game. And we're going to run through, what's going wrong, who's particularly to blame, what we're not doing right, what could we do doing better. We're also going to touch on how much blame for this rests on Brendan Rodgers' shoulders. He seems to have been given a lot of slack this season by a lot of fans, myself included. But we'll talk about whether that slack's coming to an end now. And next, we'll talk about where we go from here, both for this season, for the rest of this season, and for the summer that's to come, taking a bit of a longer-term view on it. And then we'll finish with the Celtic socials as usual. So, starting with the Kilmarnock game, I might ask yourself, Robert, first to give me a view of the lineup as it was named before the game. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen here.
Yeah, I think there was only one change in the lineup, and that was Greg Taylor was back in for Burnaby. I don't think there was any other changes from the Scottish Cup game against St Mirren. I was pleased to see Taylor back, and I thought he was busy and industrious for the 1 hour of game time that he was given. I'm not a fan of Burnaby, of which more later when we discuss their equalising goal. I think the conundrum is still whether Kyogo playing off Ida is something that works or not. Well, Kyogo scored in his last two games, and are we missing something from the midfield with this current lineup? So it was pretty much as I expected. And, I think we're also going to talk a little bit later about the substitutions and maybe what might have been better substitutions to make, given that it was a pretty tight game.
All right, so before we go any further, I'll just say hello to everybody in the comments there. We've got a lot of our usual subscribers making comments there, and welcome along, everyone. We always welcome people to get involved. 420 somewhere saying good morning, all hail. Michael Ross is saying, "Hail, hail, my fellow totally scunnered Celts," and that's that pretty much sums up the mood, Brian. So the game started, and I think it started reasonably well for us. Is it fair to say that? And what were your views on the early exchanges?
And you know me, Stephen, never do my homework. I was watching it on a stream, unfortunately, that was cut back and forth, so I couldn't really get too much. But again, you know, Kyogo scores. I think that initially it was good, as you say, it was good to see Taylor back in place, but that back four just gives me the fear. You know, I mean, looking at right back Ralston, you know, he's a 6.5 out of 10 every week. Scales, I think, has been on the dip for the last month or so. I think he's been just missed triangle, pass it this side, pass it. And I don't think that the part, as you said earlier, Robert, the partnerships, Scales and Welsh have only played a number of times this season. And I thought maybe, I know you were saying it was good to get Taylor back in. I would have probably stuck with, stuck with Burnaby, and then maybe brought Taylor on for the last 20. I just thought putting him into that game might have been a game too soon for him. But I don't know. It's like you're watching game by game at the minute, and even watching them, even under the bad days of the COVID season, and even, you know, sometimes under Lenny, you could see a goal coming. I literally cannot see a goal coming at the minute for us. It's hard. It's hard to watch. It's a little laborious. It's a bit, you know, sometimes they go long, sometimes they go short. It just seems to be, let's try anything to get a result. You know, we'll put the big lad up front, Ida. To be fair, he did well. And then it's like, let's play Kyogo off him. It's like everybody coming in seems to be the man who's going to save the season. You know, it's like whenever CCV's back, I know I'm going off on one here, but or when Atati comes back, or when Bernardo comes back, you know what I mean? It seems to be everybody's gonna be this magic get out of jail card free, get out of jail card. You know, I just think there's elements of me that thinks that he's potentially, with some of the players, of, I'm not even say down tools, but could be doing a lot better. And you know, there's O'Reilly hasn't been great, and I think Brendan's afraid to, you know, drop Scales or rest Scales, the same as O'Reilly, and the same as McGregor, who I think has been. I think McGregor last really good game was against Rangers. I don't think he's been at the races somewhat, and there seems to be too much change at the minute across the team, and the players are maybe confused to do this, to do that. There's no, I mean, look at Rangers. Tavernier takes the penalties. Tavernier takes the free kicks. Tavernier takes the set pieces. Whereas us, it's changing every week, kind of thing. And I think, you know, with 12 games to go, what we need is stability. And I don't think the 4-4-2 is working. I would go back to the 4-3-3. And I don't know. I'm a bit like Celtic. I'm all over the place, you know.
We'll pick on individual players in a while, but just for the moment, Robert, do you want to talk us through the goal? I think it's fair to say we deserved to be a goal up at that point. Do you want to just tell us what you thought about the goal? Pretty well, what goal it was?
I thought it was a good goal. I was just going to say, on the early exchanges, it just seemed to me that Kilmarnock are a very confident team just now, and they were happy to knock the ball out. They had a reasonable chance. Somebody slung in a cross from the left wing, and one of their players got up above. I think it was Watkins got up above Greg Taylor. Easy save for Joe Hart, but it was a sign of things to come, that they were going to be putting a lot of balls into the box. But I thought we settled into the game. We made a few chances. I thought the goal was excellent. I mean, Palmer, who I think had a bit of an up and down, first 20 minutes, couple of bad mistakes, miscontrol. But he did have the beating, I think, of Mayo, the fullback. But this time he comes inside, comes into the middle. I think a couple of other players, Maida and O'Reilly, get a touch, and then Ralston lofts this cross over to the left-hand side of the box where Kyogo's peeled away, and it's a beautiful header. It's a beautiful goal. And at that stage, I'm thinking maybe, we can go on and win this game. But, the fact is we don't get many clean sheets. And, the stat on that, we've played 35 games this season and we've only had 13 clean sheets, which is pretty poor, I would say. And therefore, when you do go a goal up, you tend to think it's not going to be enough, that we're going to have to score two to win. And I think if you compared us with Rangers since Clement took over, Rangers are getting quite a lot of clean sheets. They've got a fairly settled back four. It's usually only the left back that changes for them. Whereas, I share Brian's concern about that back four that we had out yesterday. It was amazing that we kind of won at Ibrox in September with, I think, potentially an even worse back four than what it was yesterday. So we just... And I think things could have been worse in the last 2 or 3 weeks, because I think Joe Hart's played pretty well and he's had quite a lot of important saves in nearly every match. So, yeah, I think in the first half, we had a few chances. There was the one Palmer was put free by McGregor. He seemed a bit slow to shoot and the goalkeeper came out, smothered one at his feet. Probably should have done better. He either should have hit it earlier or played it across the face of the goal. I think Maida and Kyogo were both there. There was another one where Kyogo lofted a ball to the back post, which Maida was charging in unopposed, and he seemed to hesitate, and he didn't connect properly with it. It was actually a very good chance. And then just before half-time, there was the double opportunity for Matt O'Reilly. The first one, the goalkeeper make a good save. The second one, the O'Reilly header, he got cleared off the line. So at half-time, I was kind of quite happy that we were a goal up, and I thought we'd made 5 or 6 pretty good chances in the first half. Joe Hart had to make one great save from Donnelly's header from the set piece. But generally, I thought we were on the right track. And so I thought we deserved to lead at half-time, and it could have been by more, frankly.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, Robert. Going into half-time, I was kind of had 2 trains of thought. One of them was, yes, we're well ahead here in terms of chances, in terms of possession. But it's always in the back of your mind, isn't it, that there could be a second half collapse. And it's one that's happened. It's something that's happened multiple times this season, and it's really difficult to explain. But we'll touch on that in a minute. So we go into the second half. He makes one change at half time when he hooks Palmer and brings on Yang. And now Yang, for me, did Yang's usual thing. He had a couple of decent enough runs. He's got a little bit of a step over. He's not too bad at dropping his shoulder and maybe getting half a yard on someone. But after that, that's about it. So what was your impression of the second half, Brian, as it started and as the game started to get away from us?
And again, Stephen, apologies because I was back and forth with the stream. So maybe, Robert, okay. Could you support me?
Yeah, I'll go to Robert for that one then. So
sorry, man.
Maybe we'll talk about the substitutions because I think they were probably pivotal to how the game changed. As I mentioned, we made one substitution at half time. Then round about, I think it was round about the 60-minute mark, we took off Taylor and brought on Bernabe. and I think at the same time was that when we took off Maeda and brought on Nicholas Kuhn.
That was a bit later.
A little bit later, sorry. Now we also brought off Kyogo, or we brought off Ida first, and went back to the 4-4-2, didn't we? And then eventually replaced Kyogo with O. So we ended up back in our usual 4-5-1 formation, or 4-3-3, whatever way you look at it. But I felt the turning point in the second half was bringing on Bernabei and taking off Taylor. Now that seemed to coincide for me at a time when Kilmarnock started to really press us high up the pitch, and sort of pinned us into the corner a couple of times, and we just couldn't get out. And I'll just bring up a comment from Lovett here. And he's saying the panic in defence when team presses high is unbelievable. And the panic was almost palpable through the whole team when they pressed us high at that point. And I think that sort of contributed to us just losing complete control of the game, and it gave Kilmarnock such a lift. So what was your take on that, Robert?
Yeah, well, I was assuming that the Palma withdrawal was forced, was that he had taken a knock just before half-time. I've rarely been impressed by Yang in terms of, end product in all these various performances this season. So I think we lost something straight away from an attacking point of view, because I just think Palma's more capable than Yang. We did have chances. O'Reilly had another great effort from the edge of the box, which I thought that was a good save. And there was another one where the keeper came diving out at Maeda's feet, just as a ball over the top. So I thought the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the second half, we'd continued to look like the better team. But then, as you say, Stephen, suddenly we couldn't get out of our own half. We were pinned back for what seemed like 5 to 10 minutes. And Kilmarnock, I think Armstrong, the winger, had a great chance at the back post, very similar to the Maeda chance in the first half, and he fluffed it completely. And then they had the second set piece, I think it was over 70 minutes, when Joe Hart had to make another terrific save. By then we had Bernardo had come on, which I thought should give us a bit more balance in midfield. Kuhn came on for Maeda. I thought Kuhn, again, he looks as if, he's got the fear, scared of making mistakes, scared to really try anything. So, and I thought the substitution that should have been made, given that we knew Kilmarnock were going to throw crosses into the box, is that we should have brought on Nawrocki, an additional centre-half, as a bit more insurance to deal with their crosses. And, and I would have taken off either of the strikers, maybe take off Ida at that point. We know what Kilmarnock's tactics are going to be, and I just think we needed an extra body at the back, in certainly for the set pieces, but even the goal that we conceded, we were caught with too many players up the park, and I would like to have seen a more concerted effort to manage the game in the last 10-15 minutes and to ensure that we got a clean sheet. And instead, I think just a minute or so before they scored, Bernabei was way up the park. We had so many players in their half, it was unbelievable, considering we were not putting in a very convincing second half. It's only 1-0. We know that they've got staying power. They're still in the game. And we were attacking it. And I think it was Yang that lost the ball, under no pressure at all, which, surrendered possession for them to launch the counter-attack, which led to the goal. So I was disappointed with game management and disappointed that Rodgers didn't put on an extra defender and then use the pace of Yang and Kuhn. Just, I think we're not a bad counter-attacking team, which is the opposite extreme from, this domination of possession and trying to cut our way through, a park the bus situation, is that I think if we'd sat back a little bit, maybe taken some pressure with an extra defender on, and we saw Rodgers do this earlier in the season in the Atletico Madrid game when we were 2-2, half an hour to go, and he was desperate, I think, just to get some sort of result. And he put Phillips on as an addition, to give us a third centre half, and we ended up hanging on for the draw in that game. So it was a disappointment for me that we were still chasing the second goal, very much like a lot of the games last season with Ange. We would just attack until to the death, but it cost us, because I think they switched the ball left to right and then from right to left again for the equalising goal. And I don't know whether Brian, maybe you want to talk about the equaliser. So,
how was your game for the equaliser, Brian?
I resorted to go to BBC Sport and just hit refresh. Again, you're waiting on it happening. You know what I mean? We've seen this before. I think that the passages of play, and I don't want to be revisionist and look back on Ange and stuff like that, but we seem to be trying to not chase the game, but if you looked at Ange's game plan, it was not the 15 minutes. Right, lads, hit them early, get the first goal, maybe try and get a second goal, and then manage the game. It's almost like, from 20 minutes to 25, let the opposition have a bit of possession. We'll soak it up. Whereas now it just seems to be we're all over the shop. And again, you were waiting on the goal coming in, which, eventually did go in. But I just think our game management and Rodgers' game management has been very poor, and certainly was poor yesterday. As you said, Robert, you should have brought on Nawrocki or Lagerbielke, showed up the defence when they were starting spraying balls in, but no, decided to stick with the normal. And then, it's like anything else. If you keep doing the same things, you keep getting the same results, and lo and behold, 92nd minute, the equaliser. And I don't know, it just as game management for me leaves a lot to be desired. And there's people in work that you work with, and potentially they're a pain in the ass. You wouldn't go out for a beer with them, but they're very good at what they do. They're very good at organising, very good at managing, very good at a specific skill, IT, etc. So you bring the players on to suit the team, not the ego. I think, Brendan is more sort of, I'm loyal to Scales and loyal to Welsh. I mean, Welsh is basically our fourth choice centre back, and he's playing. He's a starter. You know what I mean? I just think it was common, even though I didn't really see too much of it because of the stream. But we've seen this movie before. We've seen this play before. Whereas, without looking back, you look at, we were 3-1 up or 3-0 up, and then Ange would have brought on Moy, would have brought on O'Reilly, or even a Tati. As you say, the bench, who's going to dig you out of a hole there? It's not like having Moravcik and Henrik or Sutton on the bench. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're a player and you're playing and you're thinking to yourself, who's going to dig us out here? And really, as you said, Robert, Kuhn come on and rabbit in headlights. And I just would love us to just let the shackles off, just go for it. There's periods of play, we all know that, and there's junk time, and let's try and get the game won in the first 20 minutes. Why this recycling the ball? It just heightens the anxiety from the fans, the players, the coaching staff. Get the job done in the first 15, 20 minutes and then manage it out, which I think, again, it was, the fact even that Alan McGregor didn't come up and say too much. It was Joe Hart put out to speak to the media. And there's something quite interesting. He mentioned something along the lines of, we all need to pull together and something like sing from the same hymn sheet. which I thought was, he said a lot in there. Obviously, there must be people in the dressing room that aren't pulling together for him to come out and say that. But there we go.
The BBC just reported that Celtic, the players, had a crisis meeting after the game. I just saw it before I came on the show. I think, going back to your question, Stephen, the substitutions, I think you could argue that none of the 5 substitutions strengthened the team. You could maybe say Bernardo was a decent substitution, gave us a bit more balance in midfield, but the others didn't do much. And as Brian's just said, under Ange, we would be bringing on players in 65, 70 minutes. More often than not, the subs were scoring and providing assists. It was a really strong bench for most of last season. And the bench just looks a bit weak, quite frankly, or too many young players who, maybe not ready to shoulder the responsibility of digging us out of a hole.
Yeah, I've just pulled up a comment there from Ampang Boy, and he mentioned something that I was thinking about Tomoki Iwata, who was on the bench. And to me, he would have been a sensible introduction into the game, especially just after that 60-minute mark, where we just totally lost control of the midfield, couldn't keep a hold of the ball. So for me, I think he should have brought on Iwata and took off Matt O'Reilly, who had a pretty poor game, especially when it became apparent that we were hanging on for a 1-0, because Iwata is a more defensive-minded player. He's a physical presence as well, and it would have helped us at the set pieces that we started to struggle on. So Mahesh, I'll bring up this comment from him as well. Killie won the last 30 minutes of the game, in-game momentum, and outshot Celtic 6-2. Not good, since you would expect Celtic to finish stronger like seasons gone by. And that was very obvious watching the game that Kilmarnock were finishing stronger. And just to touch on the equalising goal, there were so many poor efforts from players in the run-up to that goal. I know it ultimately ended up being Bernabe who was the one who was carrying all the flack for it, because he got out-jumped to the back. Well, he hardly jumped at all at the back post. The guy just peeled off the back of him. But if you look at the run-up to the game, Yang gives the ball away in the Kilmarnock box, and then doesn't really bother trying to race back to win it back. The ball breaks left to right. A back post cross goes in. Ralston gets sucked towards the ball, leaving a guy completely unmarked behind him, which probably Kuhn should have tracked back to pick up that man, but he hadn't bothered his ass tracking back either. So the guy then gets to cross into the box, and the guy gets Watson, the boy's name was, just pulled off the back of Bernabe, and it's an easy header at the end of the day. I don't think you can attribute any blame to Joe Hart. It was too far away from him. So just a general lack of effort from me that led to us conceding that goal. And then, even once we conceded the goal, we had still had another 3 or 4 minutes of injury time, but there was nothing at all. There didn't seem to be any spark or urgency to get the ball forward. In fact, just after they scored, there was an incident where Welsh and Scales started playing past the parcel back to one another again, similar to what they were doing the whole game. And this was with about 2 minutes of injury time left, and the crowd just went ballistic. And, that to me was just farcical and sort of summed up our performance. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to talk about how the team's playing in general and see if we can point out things that are going wrong. I'm going to play a little video clip here, and it's from the first half. It only lasts for 49 seconds, and it's a passage of play of Kilmarnock pressing Celtic. So let's just have a look at this and see what you think.
I think there was another example in the second half where they pressed us more aggressively, and we were making mistake after mistake trying to break the press. But I mean, Kilmarnock are very good at that. They beat us at Rugby Park. They've beaten us twice this season, and I mean, it's interesting. Rodgers' record against Kilmarnock now in league games Rodgers 1 or Rodgers 2 is only 4 wins out of 11. So
do you think the
this is not a
guys?
fixture that he relishes.
Do you think basically? So take out Hart, Scales, Kyogo, O'Reilly, and McGregor. Those remaining, like I'm looking at the left back. That was Taylor's first 60 minutes back playing football, right? So in terms of minutes in the tank, that was obviously Scales has been all present all season. Then you had Welsh. I think that was Welsh's second 90 minutes under his belt.
Yeah.
It's certainly the second. You're waiting for him to get injured, God love him. And then obviously Ralston's maybe his second 90 minutes in the tank, or the third in a row. So you're getting this stop-start, and I think the players that are coming into the group, the players that are coming into the starting 11 are almost afraid to make a mistake because I don't want to be the one that's made the mistake here. And Burnaby, for all his faults over the last couple of games, and I know as at fault for the last one, he was trying. He was a sort of almost like not a shining light, but he was certainly he's not a left back. He's more left wing than anything else. But you have players coming in and out, like Bernardo's coming in for 20 minutes here. He was ever present in the Champions League games and the games against them. Whereas there's Palma's in and then he's out. Maeda's in. He's just back from the Asia Cup. So there's no continuity. So when you start messing about with the pieces of the jigsaw that are defence, midfield, attack, you think about it, like Yang came in after whatever it was, 60 minutes. Or no, didn't Yang play the second half?
Yes.
So he's in his head, he's thinking, well, I don't want to make any balls ups here, so I'll keep it safe. And then you have Bernardo coming in, you have Kuhn coming in like a rabbit in the headlights. There's too many people. Like O'Reilly's been stonking for the last couple of weeks. But Rodgers is probably thinking, well, if I gas O'Reilly, or that's the only saving grace this season is that he's been playing well. He's improved, but he's on the way down now. You know what I mean? I just think that in terms of like a chessboard, almost there's only really 4 pieces that have given us continuity all season. 4 to 5 players that have given us continuity, and it's the players coming in and out. And the tweak, and it's frustrating because when you see Nawrocki, Lagerbielke, I mean, what could they be doing? You know what I mean? What do they need to do to get a couple of minutes in the shirt? What do those guys have to do to get a game for Celtic? Because looking at it, Scales and Welsh are they're not it.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah,
it's too much recycling. I know on paper we should be hit. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, I did a wee bit of research today. We've had, in our 35 fixtures this season, we have had 8 different centre-back partnerships. So we just haven't been able to find continuity at any time this season because of the early season injuries to Carter Vickers, to Welsh, to Nawrocki. I mean, Scales has obviously played far more than any of the others. And here's an interesting stat. On 13 occasions this season, we've had to sub a centre-back. So I think 5 times Carter Vickers has had to go off. Welsh 2 or 3 times has had to go off. Nawrocki as well. So, I mean, this is unprecedented that you would have a centre. You don't have a centre-back pairing, and even when you're putting 2 guys out there, so many of them are having to be subbed off with injury. So I think that's obviously the backbone of the team, and only one of the 4 of the back 4 yesterday would make the best starting lineups, probably Taylor, and plenty of people have got reservations about Taylor and the drop off in his form this season. So clearly in the midfield, our chance creation is way, way down on last season. So there's just not enough creativity coming from the midfield three. And maybe one of them needs, maybe Hatate will make a difference if he comes back, and if he comes back in top form, no guarantee of that. Or you tinker around, you push McGregor forward a bit, as you say, bring in Timokey, a defensive midfield specialist, give us a wee bit more insurance at the back. And then the front three, well, I mean, none of the strikers, none of the forwards are having a good season, you know, and we've got endless number of wingers who are generally disappointing.
Let's just talk about the wingers for a minute. So the next section on my notes here I wanted to talk about was, you know, let's draw a line under the game and see, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? Both in terms of for the rest of the season and beyond that into next season. So we'll talk a bit first about team selection. And the two areas of the team I wanted to talk about, we've talked a bit already about the back four. And in my view, you know, my opinion is that every Celtic player, every Celtic first team player should be a walk-up starter to every other SPL team, with the possible exception of Rangers. Now, if you look at our starting back four on the weekend there of Ralston, Welsh, Scales and Taylor. Now, any one of those guys, which in my opinion, maybe not Taylor, I think might be a bit harsh on him, but would struggle to get a game with a team like Kilmarnock, with a team like Hibs, with a team like Aberdeen. And that's why we're struggling against these teams, in my view. I think that's one of the weakest back fours we've fielded possibly since the 1990s. And I think that's where a lot of our problems are stemming from. So moving forward, I'll go to you first, Brian. What do we do about the back four? What's our chance? What's our options? Cameron Carter-Vickers is apparently going to be fit for next week. Alistair Johnson's hopefully going to be fit for next week. So what do we do for the rest of the season with the back four?
Again, you're bringing in people who are just off the sick bed. You know, you're bringing CCV back. Yeah, obviously on paper, but he needs to get match fit. You know, straight away you're almost like playing with a quarter of a man down, almost. You know what I mean? I would just, if it was me, and I know he's been loyal to Scales, and I think Welsh and Scales needs to be either put in the left back or put on the bench. And I think he just needs to try something different. Sometimes in work you have really good people who are very good at what to do, but because of whatever happens, it doesn't work. And it's not working at the minute. You know, Nawrocki, at least he can play the ball out a bit, and he can shield the ball out. You know what I mean? And he can make a pass forward. I would put him in, you know, absolute nailed on. Ralston, I think I would still keep him and then phase in Alistair Johnson, depending. I think Alistair has had a particularly poor season by his standards. Again, I would keep Taylor, and then does he, you know, I would have Lager-Bielke in there, and so what's he got to lose? You know, midfield. I would definitely bench O'Reilly, because he's been all over the place. McGregor would keep McGregor in there and play Iwata or Bernardo. And then again, wingers wise, you know, Palma is good when he's on form, but how on form is he going to be? And was that an injury after 45 minutes, or was that Brendan asserting his authority on the whole thing? I don't think Yang is up for discussion. You know, do we go long? Do we play O and Ida up front and then Kyogo behind? I know it sounds ridiculous, but see, at this stage of the game, there's 12 cup finals that need to be won. But I think defensively, Joe Hart has been fantastic. And you know, everyone, I think a couple of months back, we were saying about, we need a new keeper, we need this, we need that. He needs to change it, and he needs to take the emotion out of it and say, look, guys, I just need to change a few things here. You know, maybe I don't know. I'd love to see. I know, keep going on. Mitchell Frame, what happened to him? He had a brilliant game in the Champions League. All these guys seem to play really well. They're able to raise their game, but it's the small teams, the allegedly smaller teams, are the ones that are giving us trouble. So I think I don't want to curse but it's shit or bust at the minute for Rodgers. And if he doesn't, if he puts the same line up again, you just have to. It's on him. He has to change it up. He has to do something. Things don't work. Try something else. Manage the game. Go long if needs be. I mean, look at I'm not going to say if we could have had him, but look at Miovski. We're what, 4 or 5 million. It beggars belief, really does. But he has to change something. Rodgers has to have a plan for first. Not to, when's the next game? Is it Wednesday?
No,
next weekend.
Next weekend, okay.
Next Sunday. And worryingly enough, by the time we play Motherwell next Sunday, we'll probably be 5 points behind Rangers.
Yeah. No, Rodgers has to change it. He has to do something. He has to earn his money.
Robert, I want you to talk to me a bit about Nicholas Kuhn. Because this guy was signed for 3 million in the January transfer window. And we were told a guy who was quick, direct, and loved to take a player on. And all I can see is entirely the opposite of that. In fact, he's sort of gone into a team that's full of bad wingers and is now comfortably, for me, our worst winger. So what do you think's going on there, Robert? He's offering nothing at all, isn't he?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think he's not playing with confidence. Maybe the whole team's not playing with confidence. Maybe it's been a difficult environment for him to step into. But he got a goal at Pittodrie, which gave me promising thoughts about him. But those have disappeared completely. He probably is at the bottom of the pile. I'd rather have Forrest in there any day than Kuhn, because I think you'll get 100% from Jamesy. He'll try things, he'll shoot. So I just think Kuhn very quickly has become part of the malaise that's affecting quite a few in the team. We've tended to have players playing on the left, like Palma, Maida last season, doing better on the left side. The right side's been a bit of a problem for us. If Abada was not producing, and clearly Abada's gone now, so another loss. But I don't know why we didn't sell him in January, because I can't believe his views, that would have been apparent after the Hamas attack. I can't imagine his views changed between October the 7th and the 31st of January. So, and we might have got decent money for him. I think we gave him a few games, to watch just before the window, just to show that he was fit, remind people that he is a young talent. And I kind of thought that when Kuhn arrived, that maybe that Abada was going to leave and that it was a like-for-like swap. So he's certainly not showing what we were led to believe that this guy's got. He's been at Ajax, he's been at Bayern Munich. He does have some pedigree with Rapid Vienna as well. But thus far, he looks as if he's hugging the touchline, and we haven't really seen him come inside enough. And if he has got a shot on him, that's what I'd rather see him do. And I think, just to follow up on Brian's comments about the team, what should the team be doing? I think we've got to make ourselves more difficult to score against. So I don't mind if we play it a bit more defensive or pragmatic, an extra body in midfield, one less winger. And frankly, if we win every game 1-0, I'm happy, right? It's all about getting the Champions League money. It's about stopping Rangers getting that Champions League money. And right now, it just feels like death by 1,000 cuts. every week is bringing more angst and more agony. And I think we've really got to pursue clean sheets as an absolute priority, and in the likelihood that we'll get enough chances to win games. But the way we're playing, I think, is we make it too easy for the opposition to stop us. So I'd like to see a dedicated defensive midfield player in the team sitting in front of the back four, allow McGregor to get forward a bit more. And I would, given that none of the wingers are playing well this season, I don't see why we should play two of them every week. So I would ditch one of the wingers. I'd probably keep Palmer because, he does create. He has got quite a number of goals and assists, and probably play without a right winger. And that means juggling the team around. But I do think Brendan's trying lots of different things to try and find some sort of winning formula. He is chopping and changing personnel and tactically. And I think the 4-3-3, which has been, which worked really well under Postecoglou, doesn't work as well, given the slower tempo of how Rodgers' teams seem to play, and this, retaining and recycling possession at all costs. So less of a risk-taking approach means, I think, less chance creation and less goals. And it is a low-scoring season for us. I think we're barely managing 2 a game, which is well down on last year. I think we ended up with 114 league goals last season, which was, admittedly, was an outlier. It was phenomenal.
All right, so just talking about Brendan Rodgers, so let's address the elephant in the room. If you're looking at the comments coming in, all through them, there's a sort of similar trend. Every few comments, there's a Rodgers out suggestion. So my question for you guys, and I'll stick with you first, Robert. How much of the current malaise at the club do you think can be laid at Brendan Rodgers' door? And do you think there's a conversation to be had just now about sacking him now?
Well, I think he is responsible for the slower tempo that we have been used to in the last couple of years. So we do give the opposition a bit more time to position themselves and to thwart our attacks. I think, he is a good coach. I think he definitely improved Scales and improved O'Reilly for a while. But I agree with Brian that both of them have gone off the boil in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I would not change the manager at this stage of the season. I think he's been dealt a bad deck of cards. I think we just don't know how much he's been involved in recruitment and how many of the players that have come in are players that he has specifically asked for. I can't see him staying for next season. So no matter what premise he decided to come back for, and presumably this was Dermotdesmond's gig, getting Brendan back, I think whatever he was promised, whatever he was told to persuade him to come back, I think is probably not happened in reality. So I'd be surprised if he stays. I think if he wins the league this year, it will be probably the finest achievement of his managerial career, because it's really not a great squad. And I don't think Rangers are great either, but they've found a way to win every week. And we saw they had something like 43 shots against Ross County. That we struggled against Ross County two weeks earlier. So yeah, I think Rodgers takes some of the blame. We already discussed, I think the game management's not been good enough in tight fixtures. Another example where we lost the game late was Lazio at home. When Pedro scores in the 95th minute, when our 2 fullbacks are charging up the field. We lost a late goal at home to Motherwell in November, which cost us a couple of points. So I think I still believe that Rodgers can maybe rescue this season, just because he has such a fantastic record at beating Rangers. But I'm less confident that we're not going to drop more points against the other sides in the division. And clearly, Rangers are now beating everybody. And they've got Hearts at home, who are on a fantastic result, and then they've got Kilmarnock away on that pitch. And I think if Rangers win those two games, it really is, there's no margin for error at all for us.
And Brian, I'll get your take on this as well. Rangers are reputedly on £3 million a season. So if we were going to sack him now, or even at the end of the season, you're probably looking at an upwards of a £6 million payout. Do you think that that's likely at all? And maybe in the scenario, I mean, sitting here today, I think we can all agree it's not going to happen like this week. But see if we go any further behind Rangers, maybe 6 or 8 points behind them, do you think the board would pull the trigger in that situation?
Again, I don't think they would pull the trigger, but I think Rodgers realises that, see if he doesn't win the league, I'd say that's him finished as an elite level manager. So that's the only good thing I can say about having Rodgers is his ego, that he will try and turn this round. And then I agree with Robert. I don't think he'll be here next season. I think it just hasn't worked with whatever, the stars aligned and players getting injured and crap recruitment. The board will not sack him. The board, as will do nothing. They're happy to, go through the motions and fall asleep at the wheel. But that's my only hope, is that he's got such an ego that he'll be thinking the next move, whether it's Palace or wherever. I don't think he'll be here next season. And God love him, I don't want him here next season. I would have Derek McGuinness in there. I know that sounds random, but he can't beat. It's almost like he can't beat the small clubs, but he can try and raise his game when the spotlight's on him, when it's the Rangers games or the Atletico Madrid. But really, this season, what has been an outstanding game? What have you? It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. And when Robert, you were saying earlier on about getting James E. Forrest in, that's how much we have really went down. The fact that we're looking at James E. Forrest, and I love James. He's a great professional and has been a great servant to the club. But it shows you where we are in terms of a club when we're looking to James Forrest to help us get over the next 12 games. But I don't think it's worked. I don't know really what to do. There's rumours of the club getting sold. There's smoke and mirrors, and there's statements by Rodgers saying we needed to be a wee bit more. Was it dangerous? He said in the market. Braver in the market. I don't know. I think Rodgers has realised this is not working. But all I can do is try and stay to win the league. And if it doesn't win the league, if he doesn't win the league, I'd really worry for him. Not worry for him, but I don't think he'd get another gig as big as this again. And Fulham awaits, or whoever.
I think the board's responsibility, given that managers rarely last 2 seasons or 2.5 years anymore, we haven't really had anybody since maybe Lennon the first time round that's lasted more than 3 seasons. I would think that the board almost have a permanent list of potential candidates, ready to reach out to if they have an emergency situation. And clearly, I think when Rangers got rid of Michael Beale, they had candidates lined up for interview. And I think the nature of the game now is that managers tend not to stay very long, and particularly when we're struggling a bit just now, I would hope that the board would be thinking about this. Will Brendan walk, or will he get pushed? And if either of those things happened, what are we going to do? We don't want, John Kennedy taking over again like he did in the COVID season. So, I think boards have to be prepared, and I'd like to think ours was. But, we had the Eddie Howe fiasco before. Thankfully, we ended up with Ange for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's time to break everything up. And the coaching staff, like Kennedy's been there, and everyone's saying how great a man he is, and this, that, and the other. And Strachan, and that's just gets. And the foolish Celtic fan in me would say, gas Rodgers, pay him $8 million, get Mourinho in, and just say, Mourinho, you've got 12 games. If you win, you get us into Champions League, or win, there's 20 million or whatever. You know what I mean? I know Mourinho's as bad as Rodgers, but
it's a bit early in the morning for drinking there, Brian.
I know. Did anyone see the thing on Twitter? Sorry, Stephen, the railroad you hear about Dominic Mackay and his signings? Did anyone see that? It was a piece on Twitter.
I read a bit about that. Yeah,
it was interesting. It was like he brought in Juranovic, Giacomakis, Sabata, and a couple of others, and then they were subsequently sold within, I think it was in 9 months or 10 or 12 months of them signing. You know what I mean? And apparently there was no sell on. There was a low sell on clause. Just found that interesting that he walked, and then within a matter of months the players were gone.
He was a bad appointment. He did not know football. He did not know the transfer market, and yet he was. He comes from rugby. Yeah, it was an appalling decision to make him CEO of the club. So I think at least they recognised the mistake and they dealt with it pretty quickly.
But having the same people around telling you, having Kennedy, having Strachan, Kennedy, many managers has Kennedy been working under? He played under O'Neill. He was knocking around when he was probably knocking around when Mowbray was there, and he's been around too long, and it's time maybe just to break it all up and start again.
Speaking of Dominic Mackay, we're kind of running out of time, guys. But I just wanted to touch briefly on the rumour that Mark Lawwell is currently working his notice, and it will be departing Celtic in the summer as the head of recruitment. Now, I'll get your take on this, Robert, first. Do you think that this is just like a sap to try and appease the fans' anger? And I guess, do you think that would be enough to appease the fans' anger to see him, or do you think others need to follow him out the door?
Well, I mean, who knows? There's so many rumours go out about the club. I think everybody agrees that he hasn't done a good job as head of recruitment. Too many project players, too many young guys. We've lost a lot of very good experience. You just mentioned Juranovic and Giacomakis, but also Moy, Jota, Starfelt. Generally, everybody's been replaced with younger, less experienced players. So, that was a gamble that was made, despite the fact there's so much money at stake this season. So I don't think he's done a good job. I thought Ange's last window was pretty poor. Signing Kobayashi, and really we've only had Alistair Johnson, emerge with credit from that cohort of signings. So I think it's been a problem for a while. I think we got spoiled by Ange's early successes in the transfer market. He really did have the Midas touch, but again, we just don't know enough about the whole process internally. And, I think everybody, nobody's going to shed a tear for Mark Lawwell. I think it's not enough for, judging by the chanting at the end of the game. I think they want more than him to depart the scene. And I think Peter Lawwell's, in a difficult position just now because, the recruitment has definitely gone downhill since his son came in, and indeed since Peter came back as non-executive chairman of the club. So we did seem to be doing all right, and it could all be coincidental, but likewise it may not be coincidental. So I don't think the fans will be appeased. I just think, the majority of fans think we've got tons of money, and we haven't even tapped into it any significant degree to bring in kind of experienced players that would have helped us in Europe and that would have maybe helped us, get over the line in these last 12 games. So I think there's just too many inexperienced guys in the team.
Could you answer me this, right? If you were that unpopular with your colleagues at work or your customer base, would you be hanging around? I know he's got 2 million reasons to be hanging around, Peter Lawwell, but obviously he's not popular. He knows that. Imagine getting into Peter Lawwell's car and driving up the Parkhead. See, if it was me, I'd be there at 6 a.m. I'd be parking my car 3 streets away. I would be almost gutted to the fact that I'm coming into the job where all my customers hate me. It's like, why bother? There's nothing. The last time I remember Lawwell speaking, did you remember he came out and he was announcing his retirement, and I remember he had a Gant shirt on, with a black Gant shirt, or a polo shirt or something, and that's like, why be there? Why hang around somewhere you're not wanted? And again, it's a calamity.
Well, I don't know Peter Lawwell personally, but what I've heard about him is that he's just an egotistical maniac, basically, who has just been there so long and been in that position so long. We know dissenting voices around him for so long that he thinks he knows better than everybody else. And I think you'll find that's what he thinks now as well. I think he thinks that he is the one man who knows exactly the correct course of action for Celtic. And if he's ever questioned, he just points to all these domestic trophies that have been won during his tenure. Now, we all know that a lot of these trophies were won with no significant opposition. And it was, in many ways, it was a missed opportunity to take the club to another level. But I think that's the answer to your question, Brian. I think he's just an egotist at heart. And I don't think he's the type of guy that will be walking away anytime soon.
I think we just don't know how much. I mean, my assumption when Peter Lawwell came back as chairman was that his experience of the whole European Club Association, potential restructuring of elite European football, his contacts, his knowledge was going to be important to the club. He is non-executive chairman, so he's not supposed to be involved in day-to-day management of the club. He's clearly Dermotdesmond's appointee, and so I was surprised that Peter Lawwell came back. He obviously had a torrid time during the COVID season. His house got attacked or his car got torched, I think. So, he's had a tough time, and I just don't know enough about how the decision-making works between Dermot and Peter Lawwell, his appointee, and then all the executives that run the club on a day-to-day basis, like Michael Nicholson, Chris Mackay, people like that. So, but he's definitely an easy target, because Peter Lawwell's not been forgiven for, the failure to make 10 in a row. And, that didn't happen deliberately. I'm sure Peter Lawwell and Neil Lennon gave it everything that season. And maybe Lenny was given a bit too long just because he had a lot of goodwill from his years with the club. But, I think at the end of the day, when you put yourself up there, you make good decisions, you make bad decisions. And, bringing in Ange was a good decision. And I think whoever it was on the board that brought Ange in deserves a great deal of credit. I think on the Mark Lawwell,
that'd be Don Mackay.
Yep.
No, definitely not. I think on the Mark Lawwell side, when Mark Lawwell was working for Manchester City, we had a steady stream of players that we got from Man City, like Boyata, Hincham, Frimpong, John Cadeti. For the most part, all successful for us, but we don't seem to have that pipeline with Manchester City anymore. And I think that's, we have signed a lot of Japanese players, Korean players. We haven't really been signing players from the English Premier League, even at the youth level, the fringe levels. So I'm curious about that, why that pipeline suddenly got switched off.
All right, well, we've ticked over there, Mark. We're out of time, so we'll just briefly move on to our social media picks for the week. And I will bring this one up, Brian, which I believe is yours. And I'll play this clip by the Twitter feed, the Twitter account, our old favourite, Dirty Footballer. Again.
Yeah, I just love anybody getting hit in the face with a ball. I just think it's hilarious. So
that happened to me at Easter Road in the 80s when Roy Aitken thundered one.
Oh no!
It came off the underside of the stand roof and came down. I had my glasses on, and it just wiped me out completely. But so it's a nice clip. Brings back memories.
And just one more is one that I came across today, and this is by a Twitter user called Leila Hamed, who's a Palestinian football journalist, and she's bringing us the news that Anwar El Ghazi, who is a former Aston Villa player, who's played a couple of times for Holland, who was basically sacked from his current club in the Bundesliga, Mainz, for comments he made about the situation in Palestine. And he's literally offered to play for Celtic at no cost after the Green Brigade display on the weekend. And this guy looks as if he's got a little bit of a pedigree. He is a winger, and we've already spoken about how bad our wingers are.
We need one of them, right?
We definitely need one of them. But I was just thinking to myself, can you imagine Peter Lawwell sitting in his house reading this? He's going to play for free.
No. Well, I think we should be depoliticizing these matters rather than igniting others. So if he's a good player, fine, but maybe not the right time. As a replacement for Abada, I don't think the optics would look good there. So,
well, we'll try anything. All right, we'll just draw things to a close then. We've had really good numbers in the live streaming, so thanks very much everybody who's joined us. If you're all here, while you're here, just hit the subscribe button and feel free to join us. We'll be doing another show on Thursday night, when we'll be looking at the upcoming game against Motherwell and covering any news that comes out of the club between now and then. I guess there will be stuff, if it's true that there's been a crisis meeting with the players, I guess there'll be stuff coming out around that. So let's hope something positive happens and we can kick on from here. So thanks very much for joining me tonight, Brian, and thanks very much, Robert.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks very much, everybody in the comments. And I'll catch you all down the road.
Heel.